Yo, what's up, you guys? It's your girl, Treaty LPC, and thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Self-Aware and After podcast. You guys are totally in for a treat again this week. I have an amazing guest with me, and we are going to dive into talking about women empowerment, building confidence, and just being able to become the best version of yourselves. I have with me Kristin Klipp. She is the founder of Truth Lives Within. It's an organization that focuses on providing empowerment coaching to women who need support and are working through things in their lives. She also works with yoga, chakra healing, and she does all of these things in a trauma-informed way. So I am really, really excited to have her on the show today and really excited to learn from her and how she empowers women and hopefully able to take some of those tips and apply them to my own life. So without further ado, please welcome to the Self-Aware and After podcast, Miss Kristin Klipp. Hey, Kristin, how you doing today?
Hi, Tree. I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so grateful.
How are you?
I am doing well today, actually. I'm so grateful that you decided to take time out of your schedule because you speak and what you do, just like kind of doing the research on you before the show, you know, you really seem to be focused on helping women. And I love helping and empowering women in my role as a therapist. So I love seeing what you do. And I can't wait to hear more about it. So I guess we could just start, by having you tell us a little bit about yourself and we'll go from there.
Okay. So I sort of got into this work. I always knew I wanted to help people. I never knew how. And I used to work for a nonprofit and a for-profit company. Okay. And my health was really starting to deteriorate in those jobs. And so that's when I started my coaching training. I started doing my yoga training and decided to leave my full-time job and start my business about 7 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And it's been quite a struggle for me as a business owner to determine the different things about being an entrepreneur. And also it's created a space where my personal journey has become the forefront, where I've had to deal with a lot of the issues that I've had growing up and things like that in order to run my business.
Wow.
So because of my own experience, that's why I focus mostly on women and helping empower them, because I have always been a very quiet, soft-spoken, in the corner type of person. I won't rock the boat. And I really started to notice that for me to have more of an impact in my business, I needed to start to break out of that piece of who I was. And I've noticed a lot of women also are in that same place where we are told at a young age that our opinions don't matter. We can't be successful doing what we want to do. We need a 9-to-5 job in order to make money. And I really want to help teach other women that it doesn't have to be that way. And there are other ways of being that can be more fulfilling. They can be more joyful. And then they can also include our self-care, where we're taking care of ourselves also along the way. So that's really how I got into this work and started doing it. And then I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur, so I love getting my hands in multiple things and have kind of combined all these different things together to create this holistic empowerment coaching program that I work with women doing that in the world. So it's been quite a fun journey.
Nice. So it's actually really inspiring to kind of see someone who was, I guess, put in a box and then breaking out of that box in such a beautiful way. And not only just breaking free and getting free yourself, but also teaching others to get free. I think there's definitely something liberating about that. So I love that part of your journey. I am curious to know, why do you think it is women kind of get stuck in that box of, okay, you got to get a 9-to-5, you got to do to stay, be a good wife, good mother. You got to do this versus being able to spread your wings and be uniquely yourself.
I think a lot of it is our culture. It's how we're brought up. It's, I know for me, it was not only cultural. It was what my mom taught me how to be a woman in the world.
Okay.
So a lot of it, I think, is the people around us. It's how we're brought up. It's our teachers. It's our mentors to some extent. When we can't choose them and kind of see, oh, this isn't authentic to me. I don't really like this. I think we're also taught to ignore what's authentic to us, to ignore our intuition, so that it becomes easier to be put in a box. It becomes easier to be the housewife who doesn't ask for anything, who is cooking and cleaning and taking care of the kids. And now in our modern world, possibly working at the same time as doing all those things. So I think, a lot of it is our surroundings and what we kind of learn and pick up without even realizing it as we grow up in this culture.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting, like adding in the working piece of it, because, like within the last, 40 years, we kind of became a society where women worked outside of the home. Whereas before that, 50s, that was the era where women they did just do the housewife thing and the man made the money and all of that. But as far as like this box that you feel like women kind of have put themselves in, so to speak, like how do you help them kind of get outside of that box and build up their confidence?
A lot of what I found is it's a lack of loving ourselves. So it's a lot of outward, I have to help my kids. I have to help my husband. I have to help my family, my friends. And there's a lack of actually going inward and a lack of understanding that we also need that same care and love that we're giving to other people. So a lot of what I work on with clients is to first build a foundation of self-love so that, one, they're noticing what their self-talk is, how they're talking to themselves in certain situations. Are they being mean to themselves? Are they beating themselves up? Are they empowering themselves with their inner language, or are they bringing themselves down? And what I found for myself and a lot of my clients is that we are bringing ourselves down. We are telling ourselves we're not good enough. We can't do it. So not only are we told externally that these things are true, we're then telling ourselves that on a regular basis. So a lot of my work is creating this foundation of self-love first, and also helping them tune into their intuition. Okay. We all have this inner wisdom within us that's there, that's speaking to us. But a lot of times our mind is a stronger voice and a louder voice. Yes. And we don't actually hear what it is, that we need and want. So I start by using a lot of mindfulness tools, a lot of tools I've discovered in yoga to help them start to be more aware of what their intuition is, what it's telling them, so that once they start listening, they can then start choosing to move towards their intuition versus what their mind might be telling them in certain situations.
Yeah. Wow. I love that, you speak about intuition, because most of the time when we hear that term, it's, when we hear women's intuition, usually it's about we're connected to a man and, oh, my intuition told me he was doing this, or my intuition told me he was doing that. How do you see that outside of that realm? Like, how do you view intuition and help guide women to tap into that, as well as tapping into their authentic selves?
Yeah, well, I think the authentic self and intuition, they go hand in hand. So once we can tap into one or the other, it becomes kind of easier to come into that realm. And so a lot of that is becoming still, getting quiet, starting to listen to like what our bodies are doing, what our breath might be doing, tuning into us. Most of the time we're not doing that, right? We're doing all the things. So really teaching women in particular to take the time to pause and to listen. And it's really a process like anything else. It's a practice. But once they start to tune in, then they can start to notice like, oh, there's this voice that's communicating with me that I haven't been hearing or listening to. It could be one or the other or both. And they start to become aware and start to learn, okay, there's this other voice. I can tune into that other voice as well. And from some of the coaching tools I do, we really work with like how to decipher your intuition or that inner voice from your mind, from that ego centered voice that usually is what is taking the reins.
Right.
So we really start to like tune into that piece. And then from there, once they're aware of their intuition, they can also start to tune into their authentic self to really know like, what is it that I want in this situation? Yeah. What do I feel drawn to? And also reminding them that their ego is about logic and needing to know why, and their intuition is not. So they're not going to know why their intuition wants them to do something versus not to do something. It's going to tell them. And the reason why a lot of us don't listen to it is because, well, we don't know why. What's the reasoning behind it?
Oh.
And we actually are not going to know why with our intuition. It is, we might in certain situations, but it's really there as our connection to a greater being, whatever that might be, whether you consider that God or source or universe. That intuition is a part of our soul that is telling us what our higher self or our authentic self wants and needs in every moment. Yeah. So once we can be quiet and start to listen to it, then it helps us tap into that more frequently and more often.
Wow. So I chuckled a little bit as you were speaking about that, because I'm thinking like the one thing women always want to know is why. Why this? Why that? And so letting go of this idea of I need to know why, I think that would be hard for a lot of people, including myself. But definitely, it is hard to kind of let go of that why. So I definitely am curious to know how you shut down that part of the brain that wants to know why.
So it's not really a shutting down, because that why is always going to be there. That's the logic brain. And I see this not only in tuning into our intuition, I see it in healing trauma in people, because a lot of times we want to know why this thing was done to us. We want to know why the situation happens. We want to know why we are gravitating towards this thing versus another thing. I think that's part of who we are as humans. So instead of like shutting down the why, because it's probably always going to be there in the background, it's about once we're tuning into the intuition, we're heightening our awareness that the intuition is there. And once we do that, that voice starts to become a little bit louder. Yeah. And the more that we tune into our intuition, the louder that voice gets. So right now, for a lot of people, the ego is the voice that is the loudest. It's telling us what to do. It's telling us why to do it. Yeah. And once the intuition starts to become louder, once we start to practice how to tune into that and to access that, then we can start to decipher. So a lot of it's discernment within ourselves of, okay, which is my ego and which is my intuition. Sometimes you'll get to a point, like the more you kind of practice, where the ego becomes a quieter voice, but it will always still be there. Gotcha. So I think also a lot of the misconception in our culture is like, oh, once we do this hack or do this thing, we won't have fear anymore. It will be gone forever. And we do that with a lot of these negative emotions. And unfortunately for us, that is not ever going to be the case. It's always going to be there, but it's about how we learn to manage it being there, how we're holding ourselves in the space, and how we're tuning into that intuition, that authentic part of ourselves. Yeah. And the more we listen to it, the louder that voice will get. Yeah. But it is a practice. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And you're right. Like everyone wants to know the why. I have like arguments with people about why the why is not important. And so many people are like, but it is important. And I'm like, it can be, but in our healing, it is not going to help us feel better necessarily about the situation if we know the why. So it's not that the why shouldn't be there, but needing to know it can sometimes hinder us from getting to where we need to go.
Yeah. And I think, I'm glad that you acknowledged that. And I kind of asked that question because I know that someone listening was probably like, well, how am I supposed to not want to know why, but just being able to realize that it is more of a reframe and a restructuring of how you think about and process the information than this fix all like, oh, it'll just go away, because we're always going to want to know the why behind it. And learning to accept that you won't know the why is hard for a lot of people, because we all want to know that. So, but as you were speaking more, I kind of got a little bit more curious about your journey. You talked about tapping into your authentic self and having to kind of retrain certain things. Can you share a little bit about your journey towards authenticity?
Absolutely. So like I mentioned, was kind of this quiet, like in the background. I wouldn't really speak up or rock the boat or anything. And I started to notice as a young kid, when I would speak up, I would see that backlash. So I would, at one point in 5th grade, I told a girl, I don't want to be your friend anymore, because I found her actually to be rather like abusive. And she had some other girl then like push me on the playground and like do other things to me to like punish me for not being her friend. So at a young age, I kind of discovered like, oh, when I speak up for myself, I actually have more problems than if I just stay quiet. So I spent a lot of my time constantly getting in fights with girls in elementary school, seeing this backlash and feeling like this doesn't feel right. Like, why is this okay? But sort of letting it be okay for so many years, until around the time I started my business 7 years ago. My health was deteriorating at work, and I had to come to the conclusion that this is not healthy for me. Yes, I'm making great money at this job, but I am miserable every step of the way and every day. So I started to make small changes to start my own business, to move out of that. And once I started my own business, I started to notice, oh, all these things about who I am as a person that aren't really true, like being quiet and not speaking up for myself. I actually need to start to work through them in order to be a more successful business owner. So it became this process for me of starting to do things that felt really uncomfortable. Like, I was never on social media telling people anything about my life or anything. And as a business owner, I'm on there all the time. And I never really thought I would be. And it became this thing where I started doing things that felt scary. And part of that is because I knew if I didn't, I would stay in my comfort zone and I would never grow. I would stay in this little box that I was put in years and years ago. And I would never grow as a business owner. I would never grow as a person. So I started to do these things like creating reels on Instagram, or like posting about very personal things in my life that would always make me cringe and I never wanted to do. But I started noticing that when I did those things, I actually felt like it was helping me break through those boxes, work through some of my own issues. So for me, it became this journey of necessity, where if I wasn't doing that, I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And I knew that there was more to life than sitting in the corner and being quiet. I knew that there was more potential I had in myself. Like when I was younger, I used to like run around the house, like singing in a microphone and being all like I'm a Leo. So I like love to be in the spotlight. And so to go from that space to then completely shut down, like I knew that that wasn't my authentic self. So it really became this journey of noticing, oh, this is scary and takes me out of my comfort zone, but I know it will bring me to a place of joy than where I am now. So part of
Right.
that was like leaving this cushy job to start my own business, where at the time I had no clients. I had
Mm.
no idea what I was really doing. I worked in a corporate setting where I knew of business, but I didn't have like a business degree or anything like that. Like I
Mm.
knew how a business could run, but it was all kind of pieced together from working in these different corporate settings. So
Gotcha.
for me, yeah, it became this point of necessity where I knew that, like, if I wanted to be confident about my decisions, if I wanted to start to talk about my business with people, even that was super scary for me to do.
Yeah.
So really having to step into this version of myself that I knew was there, but I didn't think
Mm.
I was ready to embody her. And it's really been this wonderful unfolding process ever since then, of still doing things that feel scary, doing
Yeah.
things that push me out of my comfort zone, because I know that there's joy on the other side that is so much more fulfilling than I've ever experienced before, and that I've ever experienced when I stay in that space of comfort and
Mm.
don't do anything to move out of it.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you didn't allow your cultural norms or things your mom shared with you growing up. I'm glad that you didn't allow those things to keep you caged in or boxed into something that was not fulfilling for you. Because I think that a lot of times we get stuck because we don't want to be uncomfortable and we don't realize that the growth happens in those uncomfortable spaces. And I'm speaking to myself now because also hate doing all of those things. I hate the social media part of anything that I have to do, while also being a therapist and having to be careful about what I say and who
Right.
might, come across this. I know that, from the coaching side of things, you guys have it a little bit easier because you don't necessarily have a licensing board for your state, like trying to govern or
Right.
gatekeep what you post and how you say certain things or whatever. So I find that being a struggle within my own personal life. And so I definitely appreciate that part of your journey of being like, you know what, I'm just gonna go for it. I'm just gonna do it and it's okay. And we'll see what happens. And it sounds like you've really been able to kind of build yourself up and build your business up as well, in a way that really speaks to how I imagine you working with someone as a coach what that must be like. So really, really, really nice to kind of hear that part of your story. So I want to kind of shift, you shared a little bit about yourself, but the name of this podcast is Self-Aware and Effed Up. And I always ask people how they connect to the idea of being self-aware and effed up.
So for me, there's a few aspects to it. So one that
Mm-hmm.
I think I had mentioned to you before is that I come from a family with generational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
There was some emotional abuse growing up, and yet I still keep all of my relationships with my family members. So there is this real feeling of like, I'm self-aware of the abuse that continues to happen today in our family dynamics, but I'm choosing to be there, which I also find
Mm.
to be really effed up. Um, so it is kind of this dance, I think, from knowing what I want in a relationship, knowing that certain family
Mm.
members cannot give that to me, but then still maintaining those relationships. Because for me, I think it would be too hard at this point in my life to sever those ties. Not
Yeah.
saying it wouldn't be something down the line. I know other people do sever ties with their family
Mm-hmm.
members when there is abuse. For me, I am choosing to be a part of that dynamic, even though I see how effed up it is.
Yeah.
I also see this in our culture,
Mm.
how I'm breaking out of this box of breaking out of who, as a woman, we're told to be. But then those pieces of our culture are still there and they're still present. And we're all still
Mm.
operating in that, which I also feel causes us to be self-aware and effed up at the same time, because we can see the harm. We can see what's happening and how it affects us, but then we're still in it. And it's, in that aspect, it's really hard to walk away from it without like going to live in a cabin in the woods or something like that. You know, most of us don't have that choice. So we are kind of forced to be in this culture that does not value our ideas, our lives as much as other humans. And we're kind of forced to still navigate it, even if we don't agree, even if we're trying to break out of those rules of our culture.
Yeah. It can definitely be hard. I have a unique perspective of being a triple minority in that I'm woman, female, and also did I say woman and female? Yeah, that I'm woman, Black, and also lesbian. So I'm kind of part of three different minority groups where all three of them kind of try to box me into being a certain way and acting a certain way. And it can be a challenge to kind of navigate that at times, to break free of all of the expectations from each of those cultural norms and groups. So I can definitely kind of relate to that and kind of understand where you're coming from with that. But I also wanted to kind of speak to the family dynamic of what you said. You know, we sit in very different positions as it relates to trauma within the family, generational trauma, in that I did make a decision to kind of cut off family members. And I don't know if it's easier to keep them or if it's easier to let them go. I don't know which one, because it's the impact of that trauma can still stick to you, even if they're not actively in your lives. So I don't know which one of us is better in terms of that situation. Because letting go can be hard and people don't acknowledge that. And I've had to kind of sit with that myself, because I work with a lot of people who have dealt with trauma, and they have relationships that they hold on to, but the relationships are slowly killing them. And, you know, I had to put my own action, my own practice into action when it came to my personal relationships. And it was a lot harder than I expected it to be. Yeah,
absolutely. Like, first of all, props to you for being able to do that. Well, I think most of us, if we are in a traumatic family environment, we choose not to, because that is the easier route in a sense.
Yeah.
Because it is so hard to let go of that. These are relationships you've had since you were a baby. So it really can be hard to release that and walk away from that. So
yeah,
like, I think you're better off than us who choose to stay in it to an extent, because you're not, the trauma's still there, obviously. But you're not interacting with those people. You're not getting re-traumatized by those specific people. You have your boundaries and they're strong, and you've separated yourself from them. But that is so hard. So like, it's either journey can be very difficult, and I just want to like give you some silent claps over here of like, good for you for like doing that and making those changes for yourself, because that can take a lot of brain and effort and courage to, and it's some of that courage I wish I had for myself with them, because it can be hard at times to deal with them.
Absolutely. Definitely. Well, I appreciate that. I think a lot of people, the thing people don't tell you about cutting people off is that there is a certain, it's almost like you go through the grieving process, just like if someone were to pass away, you know, because it's like they're there, you could reach out to them, but you know, that reaching out to them would be more hurtful than it would be helpful for you. And so you do have to go through those stages of grief, which can lead to one of those stages, which is depression. And so that's one of the things I had to kind of learn for myself. I was like, wow, okay, this is interesting. But we just kind of went left with that. So I'm curious, you know, in that you kind of working with women and that kind of being your mission for your organization and wanting to empower them and help them tap into that authenticity. What's one thing you wish more women knew about navigating things, or just about themselves?
I think one thing that I've noticed with my clients is we're told as women, if we're confident, we are too aggressive.
Mm.
And whereas men can be confident and they're not considered aggressive at all. So I've had to work with clients in a way where we have to change the narrative of what being confident actually means. So one of the things I think we sort of think is like, oh, I wish I was more confident and I don't know how I would get there. But part of it is unraveling these beliefs that we have about what being confident actually is. Because I think for a lot of us, it does feel like, oh, if I'm confident, then I'm too aggressive, I'm too loud, people won't want to listen to me, and I'm going to be too in their face, and then they'll be like, ew, go away. So I think knowing that like confidence can be anything that it means to you.
Yeah.
And knowing like if you're noticing you see confidence in a negative light, then maybe there are some beliefs that are getting in the way of what that is. But when we actually tune into like, what would it mean for me to be confident? It might mean speaking up when we know we need representation, when we know that we have something we want to bring to the table. So lack of confidence might mean not saying something when we feel compelled. It might also mean being able to look at ourselves in the mirror and love who that is looking at us back. So when we can do that, we can walk into public and feel confident in a group of people. But it can sometimes be hard to do that and really accept ourselves for who we are. So sometimes confidence can be other things that we don't really realize. It can be that bravery of doing what we want when everyone's telling us that we're going to fail. It can be pushing past, what other people are telling us. So a lot of why sometimes we become smaller is because not only is our culture telling us we can't do it, so are all our family and friends.
Yeah.
So when I started my business, that was one of the things that was really hard because most everyone was telling me that I couldn't do it or that I wasn't going to be successful at it. Even like I quit my job because my mom finally, she was also this one who was like, you have to have a 9-to-5 job or you're not going to be successful. You're not going to make money. So I had all of these beliefs wrapped up in not having a job and being this like pariah or something like that. So knowing that like confidence can be anything that you want it to be and whatever it feels in your body. So what can that mean for you? It can mean so many different things, but knowing that like, if you have that negative connotation to confidence, maybe there's some patriarchy and some masculinity tied into your beliefs that are stopping you from showing up as the confident self that you want to, because you don't want to be too aggressive, too bossy, too whatever that we're told as a woman when you're confident, you automatically become.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. You said a lot. And it was definitely really, really meaningful and impactful because it really truly speaks to like something a lot of us struggle with, that confidence piece. You said something about looking in the mirror at yourself and kind of needing to, really like what you see and kind of changing that, perspective of ourselves. And I think that can definitely be a lot to kind of have to face yourself, because that's when we have those moments where it really is just us. And it really is about that relationship with the self. And I think those mirror moments can make or break you sometimes when it comes to that, depending on how you're feeling that day and what that internal dialogue looks like in terms of your self-talk. So, wow. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you sharing, all of the information that you shared today and really being able to be open about your own journey as well, because sometimes we are the tools, we are the people that kind of help guide other people's journey. And sometimes it's opening ourselves up that really, really allows our clients to be able to connect and really see, oh, you did it, I can do it too. And so
Yeah.
I love that about that. So, how can people connect with you if they want to book your services or if they just kind of want to follow your journey?
They can go to my website, truthliveswithin.com. I'm also on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and all of those are at Truth Lives Within. And yeah, that's they can also email me, Kristin at truthliveswithin.com. I'm happy to answer any questions people have and help share my story, let them know that, hey, you're not alone. Like, we're all kind of going through the same piece of it. We're trying to work through our culture's rules and be our authentic selves. So
Wow.
thank you so much for having me on today.
You're welcome. I really appreciate your time. And, the truth definitely lives within. And I love this journey that you're on and definitely look forward to continuing to see that journey unfold. So I really appreciate you creating space and taking space today to share that with us all. You guys, please make sure that you connect with Kristin, follow her on social media, or check out her website so that you can book her services if you want interested in connecting. Also, be sure to follow me, Treaty LPC, on all social media platforms under the handle Treaty LPC. Until next time, be safe, be well, and make sure that you take care of your mental health.